Preflop strategies are the number one most important part of No Limit Texas Hold'em because you are dealt in every single hand. You have to make a preflop decision, and if you make big mistakes before the flop, it will cost you throughout the entire hand. And in the world of GTO versus exploitative poker, GTO strategies for preflop play are ultra important because having a great, fundamentally sound preflop raising and 3-betting strategy will give you an edge in small stakes cash game tournaments no matter who you are playing against. So today, I'm going to help you master GTO poker strategies by teaching you exactly what to do when the action folds to you before the flop, and then how to play when someone raises before you. Let's get right to it. Today, in the Mastering GTO series, we are going to be discussing raise first in and 3-betting strategies. We're going to be using PeakGTO to go through lots of common scenarios that you are certain to encounter so that you know how to play all of these common spots very well. Here we have pulled up at PeakGTO a tournament situation, multi-table tournaments, 8-handed, 50 big blinds deep with a 12.5% ante, which is roughly what you'll encounter in most games. Take a look at the hands that get to raise under the gun 6-handed. The hands in red get to raise, the hands in blue have to fold. Right off the bat, you'll see you have to be very tight when you are under the gun in pretty much any poker scenario, assuming there's 8 people at the table, because you have to worry about all the players yet to act waking up with a decent hand. Notice, suited connectors don't really love it. Small pairs don't love it. And the marginal offsuit hands like Queen Jack, King 10, Queen 10, Ace 9 also simply fold. Now, if your opponents are very passive and they won't re-raise you very often at all, you can raise a little bit wider, perhaps with stuff like 10-8 suited, 9-8 suited, 8-7 suited, 7-6 suited, 5-4 suited, 4s, King Jack and Queen Jack every time, but you really can't get too carried away. If we fold, you'll see the under the gun +1 player gets to be a little bit looser. And then in the low jack, you get to play even a bit more loosely. This would be if you were first stacked, if there were 6 people at the table. Notice now, you do get to play a few more of the offsuit high card hands and some suited connectors, but again, you don't get to get too carried away. One thing you will note is that King 7 suited, King 6 suited, and King 5 suited get to play. These are hands a lot of people may not naturally view as, call it strong, but these hands do well enough to the point that you do get to play them. These are hands that I, personally, used to not play a long time ago before I started studying GTO, but once I started studying GTO, I added these hands to my range and started making a little bit more money. Notice again, though, offsuit Ace X. That's not high, that doesn't have a high card with it, really doesn't love it. The offsuit hands with a 9 don't love it. Right? So King 9, Jack 9, 9-8, all are simply folding. Suited gappers still don't love it. If we move on around to the button, though, you'll see now you get to play a very wide range, about 52% of hands. Now, this does presume everyone folds around to you. If instead someone raises, you're going to play a different strategy. We'll discuss that in a minute. If people limp before you, well, they're probably not playing anywhere near GTO strategy, but you should also adjust based on how you think their range is developed. As you can see, though, from the button, you do get to play very wide. Hands like Queen 2 suited, Jack 3 suited, 10-4 suited, 5-3 suited. Pretty much any hand better than those all get to raise. When you do raise, by the way, you're raising to only 2.2 big blinds. Don't think you need to make it 3.5 or 5 big blinds to try to make people fold. Being in position is very good, and in general, you can raise to 2.2 big blinds in the situation. No matter what position you're in, you'll be perfectly fine. Don't overly complicate things, unless you think you're going to make a whole lot of expected value from it, which you probably won't by changing your raise size too much. Notice in terms of offsuit hands, 7-6 offsuit, 6-5 offsuit, 5-4 offsuit, 9-7 offsuit, King 4 offsuit are all folding, but all the hands better than that opt to raise. We're not going to be discussing how to play from the small blind in this video. That will be in another video. Now, what I want to take a look at now is what happens if instead of having 50 big blinds, we have a shorter stack of, say, 25 big blinds. We go over here and take a look at our button strategy. Now, you only get to play 46% of hands compared to 52% when you were 50 big blinds deep. That's because now you are going to lack implied odds with your suited connected type hands, and also your opponents can more comfortably make one pair and then just not fold it because they aren't risking a whole lot of chips. Essentially, your equity realization in position is going to be a little bit worse as stacks get shallower. So now notice you have to play a few fewer hands from the button. If we scroll all the way back around to under the gun, you'll notice that range is not going to change too much. Now we're playing 18% of hands compared to 16% of hands when we were playing 50 big blinds deep. You may say, why do you get to play a little bit more hands from under the gun compared to on the button where you have to play fewer hands? That's because position is going to matter less as stacks get a bit shallower. That said, you will notice the same general shape of the range is going to be the same, 50 big blinds deep compared to 25 big blinds deep, but you do get to play a few more offsuit high card hands. But really, from early positions, your range is not going to change too much. As you do get to the later positions, though, you do have to be a little bit more cautious, especially with your suited connected type hands and your marginal offsuit high card hands. Okay, that is what you should do when everyone folds to you. I know there's been a lot of charts through here. Go back and rewind it, take screenshots, or sign up at PeakGTO so you can go through this as much as you would like. We're going to train these spots in just a second. What happens, though, if instead, let's say you are in the low jack seat and under the gun raises playing 50 big blinds deep. So under the gun raises, under the gun +1 folds. Here's what you should do in the low jack seat. Again, under the gun, six-handed. The hands in red are re-raising to 6.6 big blinds, 50 big blinds deep. The hands in green are opting to just call, and the hands in blue are folding. Take a look first at what is folding. Ace-6 suited, Ace-3 suited, Queen-9 suited, 9-8 suited, 8-7 suited, 4s, 3s, 2s, King-Jack offsuit, Ace-10 offsuit, Queen-Jack offsuit. All of these hands are not good enough to play. You may say, but what if my opponents are bad? Well, figure out how they are bad. If they are raising far too many hands before the flop, then sure, you do get to play a few more hands by calling, especially the suited connected hands and the small and medium pairs. But if they're playing too tightly to begin with, or if the players yet to act will be overly aggressive yet to act, well, then you don't really want to be calling much wider because your opponent's ranges are going to be stronger and you're going to be facing a lot of aggression. So always make sure you're accounting for what your opponents do incorrectly. Take a look at the hands that are re-raising. Notice aces, kings, queens. An ace-king re-raise the vast majority of the time. Some hands that a lot of people naturally re-raise that do not re-raise every time include jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, ace-queen suited, ace-jack suited, king-queen suited. All of these hands instead much prefer to call against an initial under-the-gun raiser or any raiser with a very tight range because you cannot very confidently re-raise a hand like jacks, get 4-bet, and then put all of your money in. These hands instead just call. A lot of people hate playing the pocket jiggities because they think that they're difficult to play, but in reality, they're not. Call, see the flop, go from there. And of course, you should mix in a little bit of re-raising. That is why, in this scenario, the pocket jacks re-raises 26% of the time and calls 74%. But especially if you think your opponent's perhaps a little bit too tight under the gun, remember, they're supposed to be raising this. If they're not raising all of the hands in this region, or maybe not even these, you should not re-raise as often, right? Also notice what is re-raising are some, call them blocker hands, hands containing an ace or a king as a bluff. Notice ace-queen offsuit, king-queen offsuit, and ace-jack offsuit re-raise a large amount of the time. Having an ace and a king or queen in your hand makes it less likely the initial raiser has pocket aces, pocket kings, or ace-king, which makes it more likely they have something else. And if they have something else more often, that's going to make their range just a little bit weaker. The same thing goes for ace-x suited and this king-9 suited here. So against early position raisers, you have to be very tight. If we fold all the way around to the button, you'll see the button's using a somewhat similar strategy. They're re-raising aces, kings, queens, and ace-king, the hands that are happy getting it in. And then some blockers, ace-x suited, king-x suited, and again, these offsuit high cards like ace-10 offsuit and king-jack offsuit, while they are now calling pretty wide, 50 big blinds deep, with hands like all suited aces, lots of suited kings, suited connectors and gappers and pairs, and a few of the offsuit high card hands like king, queen, and ace-jack offsuit. You get to call with a wider range on the button because now there are fewer players yet to act who can wake up with a strong hand. So this is a situation where a lot of people mess up by just taking a hand like 10s or ace-jack suited and re-raising it every time, thinking it's probably good, but that's a really bad strategy. Instead, you much prefer to simply call with all these hands that flop decently well, go to the flop, and play from there. What happens instead if the raise comes from the cutoff? Go ahead, take a second, think about what's going to happen. Well, in this scenario, if the cutoff raises with this range, 50 big blinds deep, notice they get to play 36% of hands, you now play substantially wider from the button. Notice now we are re-raising pocket 10s and better, an ace-king, with the intention of being happy getting it in with those hands. And now our bluffs, our blocker bluffs, get pushed a little bit lower, essentially to the bottom of whatever our calling range is. Notice now some ace X suited, king X suited, a smattering of offsuit high cards like ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, king jack, and queen 10 offsuit all opt to re-raise a decent amount of the time. We have 10-7 suited and a few other suited connectors getting in there. But then all the other hands that flop pretty well are calling. Notice, when the cutoff raises, though, you don't get to call overly wide with offsuit stuff. Notice king 9 offsuit, 10-9 offsuit, 9-8 offsuit, ace 7 offsuit, all opt to fold. And I would fold those hands against pretty much anyone in the cutoff unless they are playing an overly loose, aggressive strategy. Now, this is how you should play if you're playing 50 big blinds deep. 25 big blinds deep, though, your strategy is going to change significantly because you can't really justify re-raising to 6.6 big blinds or 5.5 big blinds and folding with too many hands. Let's take a look at what happens if under the gun raises and you are in the low jack. Notice now, we are calling very infrequently because we're not getting very good implied odds with our implied odds hands like suited aces, suited connectors, and small and medium pairs. Notice, pocket 5s and lower are folding. Ace 7 suited and lower is mostly folding. So these are hands that would be reasonable to play 50 big blinds deep, but as stacks get shallower, they become less reasonable. And we'll see that even further as you get shallower and shallower. We'll discuss that in a future video. Make sure you click like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Take a look at the dark red range. The dark red hands are going all in for 25 big blinds. The light red hands are re-raising to 6 big blinds. The hands in green are calling. Notice ace, king, king, queen suited, queen, jack suited, some jacks and some 10s are opting to go all in. Notice now you're also a little bit happier re-raising with a hand like pocket jacks or 10s to 6 big blinds with the idea of getting it all in, because now if you do get it all in for 25 big blinds with pocket jacks, it's usually going to be fine. Whereas if you get it in for 50 big blinds or even more, it's usually not going to be fine, which is why we see hands like jacks re-raise very often as stacks get shallower, but calling more often as stacks are deeper. Okay, what happens if under the gun raises and it folds around you on the button? You again get to call decently wide with a somewhat similar all-in range of ace-king offsuit, king-jack suited, queen-jack suited, some 10s, some 9s, and ace-4 suited. You do still get to call 25 big blinds deep on the button, even against a tight under-the-gun range. This is something a lot of people do very wrong. They will fold out king-jack, ace-10, king-8 suited, jack-9 suited, 10-8 suited, thinking, oh, I don't want to risk something like 9% of my stack before the flop just to try to see if I flop well. But it turns out you actually should. We're going to discuss how to play with this stack depth later, post-flop, to make sure you understand how to play all those common spots. But today, we're just focusing on pre-flop. And again, if you want to study any scenario like this in depth, make sure you check out PeakGTO.com. Notice again, the hands in red are shoving. You'll also notice the hands in light red, the re-raise to 6 big blinds, no longer contain quite as many bluffs. As you get shallower and shallower, you want to re-raise to 6 big blinds with the intention of folding to an all-in just a little bit less often because that is more costly. Okay? Finally, let's look at what happens if the cutoff raises and we are on the button. Now we see an interesting change where we are going all in far more often because the cutoff's range is going to fold more often to the all-in compared to when an under-the-gun player raises, right? Because the under-the-gun player will naturally have a very strong range. So now you see we are re-raising small with ace-king suited, ace-queen suited, kings, queens, jacks, and then a few blocker bluffs. Notice aces and kings and queens and jacks all do some slow playing, which is interesting. You may say, why slow play aces and kings? Well, because the cutoff's range is pretty wide, and we want to keep them in with their trash when we have aces and kings and queens. Also, calling with these hands allows us to call a little bit more with these marginal hands, because essentially our calling range is going to be better protected, which will result in the small blind and big blind not being able to go all in quite as wide. Imagine what would happen if instead you never had aces, kings, queens, and jacks in your range when you called. Well, now the small blind and big blind can go all in far more often because they know you on the button are have to fold to their all in a decent amount of the time. Notice the hands in red or dark red are shoving, ace, king, ace, queen, and ace, jack offsuit. You're going to find these best ace high hands really like to shove as stacks get deeper. And these suited Broadway hands with a king down to a 10. So king, queen, king, jack, king 10 suited, queen, jack suited, queen 10 suited, and jack 10 suited opt to go all in this situation a large chunk of the time. Also 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, 5s, 4s. You could throw in 6s if you felt like it. Ace 5, ace 4, ace 3, ace 2 suited. These hands all opt to go all in a decent chunk of the time playing 25 big blinds deep. All right, I know that was a lot of information, but I now want to go through and train some of these spots. Let's take a look at a scenario where we are on the button against the cutoff, playing 25 big blinds deep versus a raise first in. So we have this set up, pre-flop in a tournament, 8-handed with a 1 big blind ante. We're on the button against the cutoff, and they are going to raise. We click start. Right here, we have to figure out what to do with the ace-7 suited. Take a second, think about it. What do you think we should do? Well, we just looked at the chart, try to sear the chart into your brain. This would simply be a call. Now, let's play another hand, king 4 offsuit. Not good enough. We will fold. Move on to the next hand. We will continue going through many hands. All right, we have a raise here. 7-6 suited. Can we call this one? It's probably close, right? I think we can fold this or call this. Notice 45% split there. You can actually scroll down if you'd like and click here and study this spot in the library just to really confirm your scenario. Notice again, I was unsure if we should be calling or folding 7-6 suited or more. I thought it was close. 50-50-ish. Not going to fault myself too bad for selecting the slightly less used play. But in the real world, I probably may call this a little bit more often just because a lot of players in the cutoff will play poorly from out of position against a decently wide button calling range. Anyway, make sure you are studying a ton. Jack 8 offsuit, we can fold. By the way, we can actually go over here in PeakGTO. We can, in the session, and we can go in and actually select specific hands to be dealt. That way, we don't get dealt the garbage, right? I want to be dealt hands that I think are close. And to be fair, if you want to remove some of the best hands, you could remove those too, just to make your training a little bit more effective. Jack 10 offsuit. I'm going to call or fold. As you see, split is mixed again. If you want to, again, go back and reference the chart, here it is. 9-7 suited. I'd mostly call this in the real world, but fold is the right play. They want us to be tight with the suited connectors. Ace-5 offsuit, we would fold. And by the way, if you are going through the trainer and training hard and getting some of the close spots wrong, don't beat yourself up, don't fault yourself too much. But if you're getting dealt a hand like Queen 3 offsuit and deciding to play it, well, that's not good. Pocket sevens can shove some. Let's just shove it. 38%. We could also call. We could re-raise small. Queen 7 suited. Fold. Remember, Queen 8 suited plays. King 7 suited. Queen 7 suited folds. And you can go through here and continue training yourself over and over and over and over. Remember, ace, king, ace, queen, and ace, jack are shoving in this spot. Ace 10, I presume, calls or 3-bets. Looks like calls or 3-bets. So again, go through and train this spot a ton. Now, if you wanted to go through and train a different spot, let's say 50 big blinds deep in a similar scenario, we could do that, or we could change our position, the opponent's position, etc. Oops, let's go through here. And I guess I was going to make sure we don't get the bad hands, but we'll go through some bad hands. And so we can go through this spot now, 50 big blinds deep, and train it over and over and over and over. Ace 9 suited, great hand to call with. A lot of people mess this up and 3-bet it, thinking, oh, ace 9 suited is good, but you don't want to 3-bet and then get 4-bet and then be in a nasty spot. So again, 50 big blinds deep, you can just train this over and over and over. We also have PeakGTO on your phone so that you can train on the go. Jack 9 suited is a great hand to call, by the way. If you are unsure of the range, again, just go back and reference it. Make sure you understand the ranges that are at play. Because, you may forget. Notice here, remember, the king 9 to 10-9 does not play. Suited connectors get to call a lot, and 10-7 suited is our fun little 3-bet. 6-5 suited, we get to call. We can continue training the spot as much as we want. Also, by the way, you can train post-flop scenarios too in PeakGTO. You can go through pre-flop and post-flop to make sure that you fully understand how to play all of these common spots well. And if you are consistently picking either the play that's only used every time or one of the two mixes of hands that are used, that's going to go a long way to upping your skills. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, do me a favor, click the like and subscribe button down below before you go. Good luck in your games. Have fun, study hard, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.